Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Here with my good friend Grant Turner and his hat from the rising sun, the country of the rising sun, and Mark Ostrander, who literally is in the shadows in Arizona on a well-deserved vacation. Boys, how's everything going?
All good, man. Just recovering from NC2As.
Yeah, for sure. How you doing, Marco?
Good. Weather's nice.
So
it's snowing here, bud.
Yeah, it's snowing there, raining here, and Mark's got a tea time in an hour and a half there. So
no golf today. Just probably lay out by the pool, have a few drinks.
He's got a golf shirt on though. He's ready to go, just in case there's a cancellation. I'm making out there to Camelback.
Yep.
So I got to start out, Marco. You're Gary Abbott, and I listened to a bunch of the interviews you did in the back. You're the MVP of the weekend, man. You absolutely crushed those interviews in the back with the coaches and the athletes after the semis and finals. So really well done, man.
Thank you.
Really well done. Not the same 4 questions everybody asked, but like you actually watched the matches. You've actually coached. Just those are hard to do. I mean, I've done a little bit of all this stuff, and those are sometimes the hardest ones when you got to fire quick and don't have a lot of reaction time, and your knowledge of the sport really came through. So you did a fantastic job. And you know me, I'd like to give you trouble about it. So the fact that I'm saying you did a good job means you actually did a great job. So really well done.
Yeah, it was different. I mean, I've never done anything like that. Actually didn't get to see much of the wrestling, David. They had a little 19-inch television back there, and in the semis, you put 2 matches on a 19-inch screen TV, and we always had somebody in the room, so I'm trying to squint to see what's going on. So it's kind of a difficult situation when you really want to talk about the match, what was going on during the 7 minutes out there, and you don't really get to see it all. You get to see little bits and pieces. So it's kind of interesting trying to figure out.
Well, I'll probably send this podcast to the guy in Tulsa and tell him to get a 65-inch back there for the media people. Because honestly, it's not that big of a deal. You just plug a TV in, Yeah,
it really isn't. There was no sound, so it didn't interfere. But you could see other people that were interviewing instead of actually talking to the contestant that was in the room. They'd be, a few of them be looking at the screen to see what was going on in the next match, just preparing for the next guy to see who was going to come in. So it kind of took away in that aspect. I tried to wait till we were done completely. Then I kind of get over to the TV and try to figure out what had happened. And so, yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. First day and a half, you and I were running around doing all the ones during the rounds of 32 and 16, and then the quarterfinals in the morning. And Earl Smith wrote a great article on Intermat about all the stuff that goes down in the tunnel. It's a great read. If people are watching, get a chance to read it. And it's super emotional down there, GT, you're still actively coaching. And so, Earl talked about the swings of emotions, he called it weddings and funerals, where somebody wins, punches their ticket either into the All-American round or into the finals. And then somebody else literally gets their hearts and dreams broken. And as a coach, being able to find that balance and be sincere and get the best out of your athletes. And, when I coached a long time, Mark coached a long time, you've coached a long time, like not your emotions can't override the moment. You got to be there for your guys and girls, but just your athletes. So.
Yeah, I think my favorite, David, probably was talking to David Carr after he had lost. And it was the next day. He didn't talk to anybody that day. Obviously he was pretty upset. Sure. And, I'd asked him, being the face of after he got third, I said, you are the face of the Iowa State Cyclones. I mean, whether you want to be or not, you are the face, returning national champ. Sure. Everybody looks to you. What did, basically I asked him what his emotions were and how he was able to do what he did. And he basically said, Friday morning was the hardest match he's ever had in his life, trying to get back up to wrestle. And he didn't want to be out there. He didn't want to wrestle. He won. He's not even sure basically how he won. And then after that, it started to get easier to get back into the wrestling mode of it. And we talk about this when we do fantasy things. It's really hard when your goal is to win a national title. You've been on the elite stage before, and all of a sudden something happens, David, and you get beat. How do you pick yourself up? And he was able to do that. And a few of the other cycles, I thought after the first day, it was probably the worst tournament I've ever seen out of a Division I school. And that was supposed to do fairly well, So they were able to pick themselves up. They had, I think, 3 All-Americans. Kudos to them that they were able to, strap it back up and do what they did. So that has lots to do with the coaching staff and, the kids themselves. So I was proud of those guys.
Yeah. Well, GT, you're an Iowa State alum, so it's good to see those guys bounce back. And the future actually looks pretty bright there. They're like a lot of schools where they're bringing a lot of guys back, right?
Yeah, I think I even saw, I think some of the other guys are coming back as well. I know that maybe Coleman, I'm not sure. I thought I saw a post about it, but there's been so much that's been happening. So.
Yeah. And GT, I want to thank you for Tuesday night, for popping over to the brawl and for everything you did. The kids love the uniforms, love the warm-ups. Thanks to Flow Wrestling for the live stream. Jason Keck, John Valdivias for doing the play-by-play. Huge shout to Mario Flores for helping us put those matches together, especially the girls' matches. I think we had 9 girls' matches, and I think that's the first time an event like this has had that many in a dual card. I know it's the first time we've done that many girls' matches. And we're excited to continue to do that. And it actually, you tell me, GT, I felt like it went pretty seamless for trying to take the show on the road.
Yeah, no, it was great. The venue was great. It was really, really nice setup. Tons of, atmosphere and, music playing. So the athletes got a full show just like they normally would. But yes, it's very difficult to take that show on the road and expect, kind of all of those things to fall into place, in which it really turned out awesome.
Yeah. So a lot of people to be thankful to and proud of, and, proud to be a small cog in that machine that we're keeping that going. So it was great. All right. So let's talk NCAAs. Let's do a little share screen here. Make sure I hit the right buttons. So we'll start at 25. One of the things that was interesting, and, Mark, you and I were kind of giving Gary Abbott tidbits, and the tournament started out very non-chalky. There were a ton of upsets at 125. By the end, I read an article, I think there were 7 or 8 number 1 seeds to win, which is like the most that there's ever been. There weren't too many guys that were slow seeds and made the finals. Keyshawn Clark and Ridge Lovett are the 2 guys that really stick out, but tons of 1s, 2s, and 3s that made the finals. And I think all 1s and 2s won. So, I think everybody kind of knows who placed what, so I don't need to do a recap of that. GT, we'll just kind of alternate. What were your thoughts on 25?
Yeah, I think, well, to first start off, like right away, Noto from Lockhaven upsets Drew Hildebrandt in, the first round in overtime. That I think was, it set off the tournament like right away, like immediately, like there's this, 16-17, which is crazy to me that both those guys were 16 and 17.
Yeah.
But it's like, then, the whole place erupts because once again, Drew Hildebrandt is on, the kind of the favorite heading into the tournament. And, once again, everybody wants it to be a shake-up tournament, right? So I think that kind of set the tone for a lot of things. And then, of course, Sam Latona beating Devin Schroeder, like right out the gate as well, like kind of like simultaneously. I think they were both on the mat at the exact same time. But, Latona was a 2 seed last year. So once again, based off the seeds and where they were, you put Latona at a 24 spot, against,
yeah,
a bona fide hitter and Schroeder. It's like, oh my gosh, just everything ensues. Of course, then, McKee goes down, and then he rattles off whatever it is, 37 straight victories in the past 2 tournaments. Just
all bonus,
just all the way. I think I either was Willie or somebody had thrown out the stat, maybe Cody Goodwin, that he's like 13-1 on consolation side brackets. So he has like 13 NCAA wins in 2 years.
Yeah.
crazy.
And on the back, he went major 7-0, fall 11-6, and then 8-3. So just, yeah, that guy's
Yeah,
a
so
whip.
that was my initial thought, is like those, like that top pocket of matches when I was looking at the bracket and all of that. And of course there's other things, but I focused solely on that part of the bracket because it was just pandemonium to start.
Yeah. So Marco, you and I are obviously watching a lot of this together. It was, by the time you got to the quarters, it was relatively chalky. Couple minor upsets. I don't think we thought D'Agostino beating a less than 100% Mastro was an upset. Brandon Kaler handling Barnett was an upset. Cardinal goes down 6-0 and comes back and beats Lamont 10-8 in overtime. Just your overall thoughts of the weight class, and then your thoughts on Suriano winning it.
Suriano's a beast. His interview was interesting. I didn't really understand some of it. So, I mean, he's a different kind of kid sometimes. But, you just tell when he was talking, he was so laser focused on what he wanted to do. I'm not sure what he wanted to do because I didn't really understand some of the stuff he was saying, but obviously it worked for him. Glory, what a great match he had. I mean, he majored Araujo. I mean, I don't think anybody in the stands saw that coming.
And it was that weird scramble, right? Like it was really
and it
close.
was.
And the Glory started out the scramble on top, and they end up in a position where Araujo is on his back and it becomes a 4-point move, and that kind of blew the match open. It was like 1 or 2 pointer and became 5 or 6 pointer from there.
But I actually think Araujo thought he was getting the back points because he had him locked up also. So for some reason, I thought maybe, I don't know. It was kind of crazy. It was a crazy scramble. Obviously, Glory finished strong in that match and won it by a major. D'Agostino, I think he's kind of the surprise for me getting fourth. What a great tournament for that young man. And Teskey being able to beat somebody that beat him the year before to knock him out of the quarters in Hildebrandt early on in the wrestlebacks was huge for him, obviously. But McKee, if somebody could explain to me why he can't do that first round and likes to do it in the wrestlebacks. And
they asked him.
I know
I had that interview.
Yes. And I just caught bits and pieces of. Maybe you can explain what he's doing out there.
So they asked him, and he said, "I'm not afraid to lose." And then he kind of got quiet, and he said, "Maybe that's why I lose, because I'm not afraid to lose. So I go for stuff." And he's a freewheeler, just like Mitch. I mean, those guys go for it. I talked to Eggum and those guys a year ago, and they said some of his inconsistency in the regular season were weight cut issues. But I've met that kid. I was with him for a week at the OTC, an awesome young man. So I'll tell you this, though, and I've said this for a long time. I've always thought it was harder to take third than second because you have to win 2 matches taking third minimum when you can't take first. The whole time you take second, you think you're going to take first, because you're on the front side of the bracket. So the surprising thing to me, which at this weight was, Kaler placing, even though it was 8th, just placing, and Oregon State having 4 All-Americans, and Oregon State winning the OSU school battle. Oregon State beat Ohio State and Oklahoma State, and you could have made long money on that going into the tournament. So, and Suriano, there's a reason why everybody was bidding for his services, and he made a huge difference in Michigan. Without him, they don't take second. So the portal is going to be a story about this, just going forward and forward and forward on this. 33. So again, really chalky, 1, 2, 3, 5 in the quarters. I mean, Courtney was a huge surprise beating Foley and Kolioko, but pretty much besides that, I mean, again, Cannon beats Ramos, and Ramos had pinned Bird. And then Bird comes all the way back through and took 5th. Marco, you can go ahead and go first here. What were your thoughts? Yeah. You interviewed RBY after the finals too. So
I did. He's just tough. And I picked Dayton to win that weight. I thought Dayton after the Worlds was on a different level than everybody. But for some reason, when he steps on that mat in the finals of the national tournament, he does not do what he does early on in the tournament. I don't know what that is, David. I don't know what Penn State has in the water. They are just so dominant in the finals. I mean, they're 9-0. They are not. Who in the heck is 9-0 in 2 years of the finals of the national tournament?
Who
I mean,
puts 9 in the finals out of 20 and then sweep?
It's hard to. We've coached. It's hard to get one national champ. How do you get 9 in 2 years and not one kid loses? And really, none of the matches were. It's not like they came from behind and won some of these. Caught somebody. They pretty much go out from the get-go and dominate the matches. So, it was nuts. I'm really gonna miss DeSanto from Iowa. He's so fun to watch. The energy that he puts out there. And I even told a couple of coaches in the back early on that I'm gonna really miss him. And they looked at me like, "Are you nuts, dude? We can't. We're so glad he's gone." And I don't know.
Well, you're a fan. They got to wrestle against him. It's totally different,
I
right?
understand that, but
Yeah.
he brings an energy that nobody else, you don't see very often. It's pretty rare to see that kind of an energy that he just goes out and wants to score points, win or lose. He's just going, to the wall. So, but besides that, David, I thought it was real chalky this weight.
Yeah.
The guys you thought were going to get where they were going to get ended up there. So, yeah.
Yeah. GT, anything to add here at 33?
Just, I think you guys covered a lot of it. I think there's also some kind of the, kudos to a lot of the guys that, maybe didn't think, no one really thought that they would be able to get in, like the Oregon State kid, Devin Turner, making his run, making a good run through the backside there. Also just, huge shout out also to, Michael McGee from ASU, basically, goes and wrestles a great match against Fix. And then, basically just comes to the backside and, ends up getting fourth. But, I think that guy's super talented for a fourth place finish. And then also to see in that match, to Mark's credit and point, seeing AD get third and then the emotions of him running off the mat and then also seeing the crowd respond to that, not just Iowa fans, but AD's he's got fans everywhere. So very cool to see that happen. So I was very, it was really cool to see. It was really cool to see that kind of response for everybody because, that kid's been around for a long time.
My takeaways are I did the conference or the press conference on Wednesday, and RBY was there. And he talked a lot about, how this is sort of his world championships, that he grew up watching Dayton make all these teams, and this was his chance to wrestle at sort of that level. His ability to be calm is super impressive. And I love the fact that these guys say, hey, if you guys find me the Loretta NIL money, I'll come back for another year. I like the fact that it's not cloaking, smoke and mirrors and people are getting paid under the table. Like, look, you want us to stay. And I'm a math guy. Penn State's best 4 guys were like 1.5 points behind Michigan's whole team, which was obviously the second place team. So, they won this thing with, 4 guys, and then even one of the guys that just scored 1.5 points on the back. So it's pretty crazy. All right, 41. As we sort of predicted, GT, on our pod and Mark the week before, because I had each of you guys on separately because of travel stuff, we thought the bottom half of the bracket could fall apart because of injuries. I'll go first here just because Jaden Ironman wrestled in my event back when he was Jaden Clayton in 2015. And, he was kind of his coming out party where he beat Cade Brock. And it's just so sad to watch him not be able to wrestle, not lose, just not be able to compete at his own level. I think if you're a fan of wrestling, you just want to see everybody have their chance to do their best. Keyshawn Clark was somebody we had talked about, another transfer portal guy, ends up winning, the first 4 rounds, makes the finals, takes Lee down. They get in a crazy scramble, and then Lee puts it on him. I interviewed Rivera for third. He seems like he's super tired of wrestling. And it's super interesting to me because we talk on the air about how guys are wrestling fewer and fewer matches, and they're still getting burned out. And these Penn State guys are all talking about gratitude and fun. I don't know if they're all just singing from some hymnal or if they really feel that way. But there's got to be a way to find a happy medium where these guys can get more matches and not feel so beat up and tanked up. So, and then, Rivera battled through on the back. Berglund was sort of a surprise medalist. Good for Penn having an All-American, University of Pennsylvania. So those are sort of my thoughts. GT, go ahead. I think you're first here. Go ahead.
I mean, I think, to your point, I think we were all kind of knowing that the bottom half of the bracket here, had some hitters, but also had a lot of injuries where maybe you're not going to get the best version of those guys. One of the things that I would probably like to point out from the bottom half is Chad Redd. Basically goes out there against, whatever it is, former All-American Dresden Simon, has a close match, basically loses in overtime to Rivera. And then on the backside, basically gets rolled through and pinned in the round of 12 against Willits.
Yeah. What happened in that match?
He got cradled up and then basically rolls through, boom.
They touch-balled him?
Yeah, in my opinion, it was pretty quick.
Well, there's 2 or 3 of those this weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, there was another. I think there's a couple other ones. I don't know for any ways in any other weight class that I could specifically remember, but I think there was another Nebraska guy. Either it was Lovett.
Jaden Robb pinned somebody like that, got on the good side of it.
Yeah. But, I think that guy, once again, he's postseason Chad Redd and making his way. And then all of a sudden, loses in that specific round. You're like, he could have been another All-American for himself as a fifth-year guy. And then, of course, Berglund. I think that was another cool story for that kid. Making his way through the bracket, beating, some good guys on the front side, good guys on the back side. So
Hindalera is in the blood round. Yeah.
Craziness.
Marco, anything to add here?
No, you guys covered this weight pretty good. Keyshawn Clark he went 0-2 in the conference, David. 0-2 in the conference tournament and came back and was finalist of the national. And we saw him early, and he looked really good early in the year when he beat Red. And I said, there's a kid you got to watch. This kid is an absolute beast. And then his season kind of went in the wrong direction for quite a while. He was winning matches, but they're really close, and you're thinking, well, maybe he's not as good as when I saw him earlier against Red. And then, 0-2 at the conference tournament. So I basically kind of wrote him off. There's something going on. Maybe he's tired of wrestling. But what a tournament. Impressive.
Yeah, and those are great. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nick Lee's the man. He is just so good. So
I think Nick Lee not only is so good, but he's so consistent, right? I think that's one of the things that, greatness is consistency, right? We've all coached and we've all competed, and greatness is how good are you on your worst day?
Yeah.
And that guy just wins. So 49, you see the top half, 1-8, 4-5, super chalky. Bryce Andonian, big story of the tournament. Never met a 16-11 match he didn't like. The Andonian Lovett match was awesome in the semis. If people go back and watch that, the Lovett-Wilson match in the quarters where he cradled him was an unbelievable match. I interviewed Andonian for third. He really had some heartfelt things to say if people want to go back and see that interview. Yanni had some super critical things to say about himself in the Sasso match, and then wrestled unbelievable in the finals. He does this thing on his double leg where he catches the far ankle and it takes the whole scramble away. If you're teaching kids, it's really something to watch. Backside Andonian comes back through. Gomez comes through and takes fourth. Sasso fifth. Milner sixth. Wilson seventh. Parco eighth. Marco, what'd you think here?
Yeah, and when I interviewed Yanni, we talked about that double because I had seen him do that before, but he didn't do it the first time he wrestled Lovett out in Vegas, and he got into a lot of scrambles, and I think he knew that was what he needed to do to score and score as often as he wanted. So I talked that was something in the game plan, and he said he knew it was there, and he knew if he could get to the ankle and to the knee on one leg and the ankle on the other, it would take Lovett's hips away. And that's where Lovett's so dangerous, when he can get his hips involved. So it was, but my son, who was there and watched a lot of the tournament, didn't get to watch it all, but watched a lot of it, said he would pay money to watch Andonian and Gomez wrestle at least 3 times a day. He would buy a ticket because it was that exciting. And they were, phenomenal. Yeah. So it was nice to see. Good weight bracket though. And it was, besides Gianni, it was really a competitive weight bracket. It really was. And so it was fun to watch. And this Milner kid from App State, what a phenomenal tournament he had. So we didn't know much about him, but he had a really good tournament.
Wrestled to a seed. Yeah. Andonian said he wanted to quit during the year too. And it was more, that theory was more and more common. It was crazy. And GT, I would never ask you to talk about guys in your team that have wanted to quit or not. But like I had Nick Mitchell on a couple of weeks ago, I think it's something that is more common than people think, and how much sports psychology stuff and stuff like that comes into play. So, all right, 57. The upset of the tournament, Willits beats Carr. We'll talk about that. Willowan. Okay, so people didn't see this. Willowan is wrestling Jared Jacques in the first round, and they go to the rideouts. Jacques gets away and hover long, like 8-10 seconds. Willowan gets rode. There's a stalemate or out of bounds. He has to get out in 1 second to tie to get to the takedowns. He gets out in 1 second in round 1, and then takes that run and goes sudden victory, semifinal, and ends up medaling. Quincy Monday makes the finals. Ryan Deacon was really, really dominant. 6-2 fall, 6-2, 10-2, 9-2. David Carr battles through for third. The Peyton Robb teamer match has been a meme. A lot of people watch. GT, what were your thoughts here on 57? And O'Connor battled through a terrible leg injury to All-American as well.
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of, great highlights right there. With, Austin O'Connor basically injury defaulting to 8th, basically gutting it out just to make sure that he could be on the stand type thing. He wasn't 100% healthy. And then basically, Willits, once again, the Oregon State story that we've been discussing quite a bit. Peyton Robb having a great year. From start to finish, like ups and downs and wins and losses or whatever, but then puts together a freaking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 match run in order to get fourth. Kudos to that athlete for making that run and beating guys and making his way all the way to the 3rd and 4th place match. I just think it's the national tournament. We talk about this all the time. All these dudes are good. 1 to 33, even if you have a bad record or whatever, these tournaments are nasty tough. So I think it's full on display at 57, how much of a variable all of these guys can have. Yeah, I think it's great.
For some reason, my Zoom is saying we have 10 minutes left. So if this happens, because I paid for the extra Zoom, but if not, we'll have to cut and do the last part. So the Peyton Robb Ed Scott match, that's where that touch fall was, by the way, if people want to see that. So, okay, 65. This match. So really weird match for me, because if Shane Griffith had won, I would have won the fantasy national championship. But Keegan O'Toole's a Missouri guy and was in. If Mackay or Griffith had won, I would have won. But O'Toole's done our clinic and is a Mizzou guy. O'Toole wins. Griffith beats Wick with the 4th crack at him. Wick becomes a multiple-time All-American. Amin beats Marinelli. O'Toole runs a pretty tough gauntlet, has to beat Valencia, Karchla, Amin, loses the first takedown. By the way, quick stat, guys that got the first takedown were only 6-4 in the finals. Usually it's much more dominant than that. Dean Hamidi, that's another guy I could watch wrestle all freaking day. Wick 3rd, Amin 4th, Marinelli 5th, Hamidi 6th, Karchla 7th, Hall 8th. Marco, what'd you think?
Yeah, I thought this was, we all knew O'Toole was so talented. I just wasn't sure he was strong enough to win at this weight because he still seems like a small 65 pounder, but he's just so talented when he hits the mat. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me he won it. It doesn't surprise me. Amin won in overtime in the quarters. It's kind of the way things go sometimes. I felt bad for Marinelli. He put his heart and soul into this. And, he gave a great interview, David. I think people need to go back and read that about being a champ. He can still be a champion to his wife. He wants to coach. He wants to be a champion to whoever he coaches. So, you got to kind of look at things like that. Guys that have put so many years into this sport didn't quite accomplish what they wanted, but they accomplished so many other things in different ways with the relationships they make. So it's a win-win basically. But it was a good weight. O'Toole's tough. I mean, and I thought he was in trouble. He got taken down twice in the first period. He was down 2 takedowns to 0 against Griffith, if you remember.
Just one.
You sure it wasn't 2, David? I thought he got taken down a second time.
Maybe. I don't know. 6-5.
Then he came back and kind of ran the gauntlet there toward the end.
When he had pitched a shutout till the finals.
Yeah.
So he also looks a lot bigger. I interviewed him after his first round, and his chest and back are a lot bigger. I think that baby face kind of tricks us a little bit. But he talked about his mentality about really literally being willing to die. And, obviously I don't know if he is, but if you think that, you're probably going to win a lot of matches. Yep. Marinelli and Kemmer, I think, are the leaders of that program. It doesn't matter that Spencer Lee might have won more matches. Those guys are the heart and soul of the program. And when guys leave, you talk about replacing team points, but GT, you're coaching a team that scores over 150 points every year. Some guys that score 18 points are a lot harder to replace than others. And I think Kemmer and Marinelli will be those two of those guys that'll be hard to replace in terms of leadership and inspiration. It sure seems like to me.
Yeah, I think, especially for the Iowa guys, they came back and, they wanted all of it, right? Spencer got hurt. I mean, and once again, not to suggest that he's not the man, but that's 20 some odd points.
For sure.
You put Spencer in the bracket, it's 20 points for Iowa. That's regardless of where he ends up in the bracket, he's scoring 20 points. Either he's getting third, first, fifth, he can pin his way, get extra bonus points, whatever it is. But I think the same thing to that token is the Oklahoma State tournament, where you lose Ferrari, who's probably at least a, 17 to 20 point guy. You lose Travis Whitlake, which is probably in a 12 to 16 point guy. Just based off of proven results. Now, it doesn't mean, once again, national tournaments are the national tournaments, but, you have leadership, you have, bringing the guys up, basically stopping the bleeding. If you're having a bad round and all of a sudden someone steps up and has a good tournament, good match, maybe reverses it a little bit. But, same thing with O'Toole's comment of, basically wanting and stepping up with his mentality. You can follow a guy like that pretty easily. It's well, hey, this is what this guy's thinking. That's kind of what I want to think like. So I think O'Toole, even though, the little baby-faced assassin who's out there pinning and cradling people and not giving up points, you can follow that as an example pretty well.
I think the 65 match was super interesting in the finals because it was 4-4 going in the third period, and Griffith had choice and didn't pick down. Yep. And that was I don't know that it was the right or wrong choice. I mean, it's easy to say now he should have picked down, blah, blah, blah. And I think it was one takedown apiece, Mark. I think that's how they got to 4-4, okay. Takedown, escape. And, they each got the other escapes. But then O'Toole gets the takedown and then gives up the super late escape to win 6-5. So I think picking those things, there's a couple matches where choice was super interesting. So it looks I think we got enough time to get through 74, and I'm going to have to figure out what's going on with Zoom. So Starace, who I would argue besides Gable is the most improved national champion in the country, wins the tournament in a bracket that's absolutely freaking loaded with guys like Labriola, Kemmer, Hidley, Massa, Plott, Mackay, Lout, Ethan Smith. Plott comes back and scores a bunch of points late and then gets Ethan Smith in overtime in the blood round. Hidley majors a beat up Kemmer for third. And so it ends up, and Mackay and Starachi had a classic match in the finals. Again, Lewis gets the first takedown, but kind of looks tired. Massa comes back through and takes fifth. And apparently he was a PE teacher and Sean pulled him out of school, to wrestle the second semester. So he's actually looking for a job. So I've known his dad for a long time. His dad wrestled for my dad. So if anybody in Michigan's looking to hire, call Logan Massa. GT, what'd you think here?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say probably this is top to bottom, probably the second toughest bracket at the NC2As. The toughest being the heavyweight bracket. And that would just be my own personal opinion, but I think 74 was just loaded. I mean, you have bona fide hitters, you have national champs in here. You got guys that have been multiple time All-Americans. You got a freshman stud and Plot. Lout had pinned, Hidley earlier this year.
Yeah, ACCs, yeah. So, right before ACCs, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think this was on full display, right? So then Starachi, he's just a winner. That kid just knows how to win, man. And he knows how to wrestle, and he has good position, he has good technique. I saw that first takedown Mackay. I was like, ooh, if he could do that one more time, I think he could, because Mackay's got really good shot defense and really good motion. I just thought, he could get one more. I think he could get it. Now, once again, like Starachi did everything right in that match in order to basically get him tired, good motion. But yeah, pulling a dude out of being a PE teacher, I mean, that's a story for the ages, right?
It's awesome. So we got 1 minute left here. I'm going to figure out what's going on with my Zoom, but we're going to close this out, and then we'll come back with 184 in the team. So we'll be right back. And we're back. Mark's on the front nine somewhere, probably hitting him straight. That guy's actually a really good golfer, which is sort of disgusting, but anyway. So we're going to try to plot on here. We're going to get into 184 here as soon as this bar moves and I can click onto it. All right. So GT 184. This was an interesting bracket. I think most people, especially in like the fantasy contest, picked Brooks because he was cheaper. He was the 2 seed. He's the defending champ. He and Amin split. Amin won the Big Tens and obviously earned the number 1 seed. It was interesting though, because like Hidley was the 3, Keckeisen was the 4. They were both undefeated coming in, and we've seen them do that a lot of different ways over the years. Keckeisen ends up taking 3rd. Truex ends up taking 4th. Hidley 5th. Romero 6th. Marcus Coleman, former border brawler, takes 7th, and Jonathan Lowe from the 11 seed takes 8th. Pretty chalky semis, 2-7, 3-6, 4-5, 1-9. Bronigal beat Coleman late, and but then Coleman ends up placing and Bronigal doesn't. So what were your thoughts here, 184?
Well, I mean, I had basically Keckeisen since day one, and his match with Truex, I mean, it was just, he was all over his legs, and then you just couldn't finish. And I had Parker basically get into the finals and then losing to Brooks basically the entire season. I just thought like those guys impressed me so much. And of course, Miles Amin is, I mean, talk about all-time great at collegiate level, 5 years, never placing lower than 4th. What a tremendous collegiate career. But yeah, I think this weight class was as good as advertised.
Yeah.
All of those guys shelling out, tight matches. Yeah. Crazy weight class. And for, Brooks to, be the top dog at this weight, pretty dang good at wrestling.
And really did it from the top game, right? Like took Amin down, rode him out, got another takedown, rode him hard. He had the riding time locked up at the end of the second period, had over 3 minutes of riding time. So really changed the game there. This was a weight that was super impressive. Keckeisen is really impressive to me. Won a bunch of close matches. I think I read an article where Venz is now lost in the blood round 3 years in a row. That's sort of heartbreaking. Keckeisen goes 7-5, 7-6, 7-5 tiebreaker, and then 6-4 And that's the worst kind of finish where you take third and beat the guy that put you on the backside. That's so frustrating. That's happened to me in a couple tournaments and just, but good for him. So 97, probably the least favored of the 5 number 1 seeds or the 5 top 2 seeds from Penn State was Max Dean. But he comes through the bracket, wins a, couple barn burners. The Ayala match had a lot of controversy. The Dupre match had some controversy. He beat Hoffman pretty easily. Gavin Hoffman made an unbelievable run from the 21 hole, beat Sloan in overtime, Bonacorsi in overtime, Woodley by 2 points. And then Dean wins late. You're an Iowa guy. We'll go through the bottom half, but it was pretty chalky. 3, 14, 11, 6, 7, 10. 2 Stout beat Trumbull, but 18 beating 15, and then 2, 7, 3, 6. Buchanan beats Elam. Elam finally gets past Bastida on the escape point and just held him off at hand fought for 7 minutes. If you had to pick a guy coming into the national tournament, you could pick one guy from Iowa to make the finals in order. I think Jacob Warner is like the 5th guy, right? Am I wrong there, or is that fairly somewhere in that range?
Well, I think out of all of those guys, like even talking to people in the know, you're like, yeah, there's an outside shot, but that's like kind of like the maybe I'm not as confident, but I'm kind of confident, and it could be one of those things that happens, but you don't want to go out there and be like, yeah, that guy's going there for sure.
Right. We beat Schultz, who he'd lost to, right?
So exercise some demons on that for sure. I think, once again, Jacob beating Schultz was probably the match that kind of got him over the hump there. And then, Buchanan is super talented.
Salty, really salty, really good.
So he beat some really good guys on the backside here, or on the front side that sent those guys to the backside, right? So
I think Mark Branch posted 6 out of the 8 All-Americans were on the bottom side of the bracket.
Yep.
And
so that side of the bracket was nasty.
Yeah, Buchanan, Elam, Schultz, Bastida, and Warner. And I'm guessing maybe Bolsack was down here too, at least 5 of them.
Yeah, Bolsack was on the bottom too. He's the 14.
There you go. So 6. So the only 2 that weren't were Hoffman, the 2 guys that made the semis, Hoffman and Dean.
Which are guaranteed.
Yeah, right. They're top 6, right? Yeah. So look at us doing math. So
I hate math.
Okay, so heavyweight, Gable Stevenson wins the tournament, goes tech fall, 10-5. Probably the most shocking thing was at one point he was losing 2-1 or 2-0 for a split second to Lucas Davison. Beat Kirkfleet 8-3, beat Schultz 6-2. Seemed like he really enjoyed the moment. I'm actually working on trying to get Brandbold and Stevenson together on the pod this week on Matt Chat, which I think would be awesome. Texted and spoke with Brandbold yesterday. Hopefully that's going to happen. All sorts of fireworks on the bottom side. So Cassiope Wood was a crazy match. I interviewed Wood after he won, and he said that he beat himself so many times in these college matches that like he would take a dumb shot and the other guy would just go behind. And then he learned that not being overly offensive was actually a good thing, that just hand fighting in position and making the other guy make a mistake and making him feel stressed. Schultz beat Paris. Somebody from the Arizona State side told me Schultz is like 6 or 7-0 against Paris all time, which is crazy to me. Yeah. And then Schultz. So that's a crazy match. Okay. So it goes into overtime. Wood gets away. Schultz reverses. And then Wood escapes. All sorts of craziness. And then like Schultz, all he has to do is sprawl, and he's in like a front headlock position for the 6 people that haven't seen this. Wood gets big, picks him up, dumps him. Schultz rolls him all the way through. So most people know I'm pretty good friends with Lee Pritz. I talked to Lee Saturday night. I go, hey man, why didn't Schultz just sprawl in the semi? He goes, he was trying to pin him. I said, what? He goes, He said, Coach, I was trying to pin him. He goes, you are a sick individual and I love you. So,
That's awesome.
I feel like that's something you would say to one of your guys. Like, it's like,
Oh yeah. Bless his heart for trying to get the fall. But dude, what in the world is like, hey man, proud of you a lot.
you're doing your part if you win that match. That's all you got to do. Get the 7 points. We don't need 9. Yeah. This weight super Big Ten dominated. And I got to give a shout out to Christian Lance. He's from Nixon, Missouri, Springfield, originally went to Fort Hays State, transferred to Nebraska. This weight, I think, had a world medalist at every spot except Lance. I mean, obviously Gable, gold medalist, Schultz, an age group medalist. I think Jordan Wood was an age group medalist. I know Kirkfleet was. I know Paris was. I know Davison was, and I know Cassiope was. So I got a chance to talk to Christian Lance before he got his 8th place trophy. And I said, you will be remembered forever. And this is an all-time great weight class, right? I mean, you're a USA Wrestling event guy. I mean, this is pretty epic weight, right?
Well, and even throw in, Nathan Traxler. He was a, age group world team member, I believe, for, okay. I think it was a U23 team. I believe Tate Orndorff was a national team member in Greco a few years ago. So top 3 in the U.S.
Zach Elam is an under 20 silver medalist.
Zach Elam, throw him in there. I think I want to say there's another guy in there that I'm forgetting. Hold on, I'm gonna look over here at my screen. Oh, Wyatt Hendrickson, undefeated on the year.
And was a world team member.
And a world team member.
And he beat Heinzelman in the 2 out of 3. So Heinzelman was the alternate.
Yep. And then Brandon Metz, U23 world team member.
Geesh.
From NDSU. He was the.
Jeez.
Well, man. I mean, let's just say he won the trials in Lincoln.
Crazy.
Yeah. So he was the Greco world team member for U23s. Cassiope was the freestyle world team member. I mean, you talk about whatever it was, the 149-pound weight class with all of those hitters in it from back in the day.
Yeah, that greatest bracket ever story, right?
I mean, I'm thinking, I know it's a big leap from what those guys did, but once again, we have an Olympic gold medalist winning this bracket. We have another Olympian in the finals. You have multiple world team members, and some of these guys are just getting started.
Yeah, that's the thing. 5 years from now, we'll literally be able to tell how great this bracket was, right? If a Zach Elam who didn't place goes on and makes a world team and medals, which is not out of the question,
right?
Then that adds to it. For us, when we do border brawl and some guy, 5 years later, when Cade Brock wrestled Jaden Ironman, we had no idea that's how great these guys would be later, So, yeah, this weight was historically good. So, we take a look at the. Go ahead.
I want to give one more guy some flowers.
Okay, go ahead.
Matt Stencil,
5-time MAC champ, right?
5-time MAC champion.
Yeah,
and I believe I don't want to over exaggerate. 2-3-time All-American.
Yeah. And the MAC had no All-Americans this year.
Yeah, I mean.
And the Pac-12 had the second most All-Americans ahead of the Big 12 and the ACC, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, just once again, wanted to make sure that I got that information out to the public. If you hadn't heard, a 5-time conference champion.
Yeah. At a big weight, it's hard to be a conference champion as a freshman, period. But it's hard being a state champion as a freshman, right? But it's the heavier you go, the harder that is, right? It's a lot easier to win 106 as a freshman than 195 or 220 as a freshman. So yeah, shout to that guy. So I think most people know the team scores. I mean, it was obviously kind of close early, and then Penn State does what Penn State does. They just wrestle to their seeds. I saw a chart on Track Wrestling that talked about the schools that wrestled above their seeds the most. And I think North Carolina was the big one. I think Lout placed and, Keyshawn Clark was obviously the big one. When you go from a 15 to a 2, that's a plus 13, and they were plus 18 overall. But Penn State was plus 1, but the point of that is, I mean, basically they had 4 number 1s win it, and they had a number 2 win it. And so there's 2 points to that. 1, wrestled your best in March, and 2, wrestled great all year, so you're seated really high. I mean, Arizona State goes back-to-back trophies. I think that's worth mentioning. I got a chance to talk to Zeke about that. Nebraska wrestled really well. They nose out Northwestern. Storniolo made a big point, I think deservedly so, of saying that his team was the only team in the Big Ten or the Nationals that all their points came from their recruits and none from the transfer portal. And so I thought that was interesting, probably because a lot of guys cannot transfer into Northwestern.
There you go.
So there's something to that. Kind of a boat race there in the middle between Nebraska all the way down really like to Minnesota. There's 12, 13, 14, the OSU, OSU, and OSU all right there bundled up. Oklahoma State and Wisconsin tied for 14th. Northern Iowa and Rutgers both finished top 20. And then Illinois and Lehigh both finished top 25. So there's a lot to put a bow on, man. Like, what were your, what are your overall thoughts? I mean, the tournament never disappoints, right?
And once again, we look at rankings almost every week. We talk about rankings almost every week. We talk about individual performances. We talk about, the ups and the downs of the season and who's hot right now and who's hot at the end. I think the biggest takeaway from, I would say, probably a season like this and a tournament like this is that, like when you get to the national tournament, anything is possible. And I think you can see why the national tournament gets as much viewership as it does, and all of the storylines that need to be probably addressed a little bit more maybe during the season is like some of the, like, setting the stage for a bracket like that, let's say at heavyweight, or even like, the 125-pound bracket with Vito and Glory going back and forth every match for like 10 matches straight.
Yeah.
I think the storylines are there. I think it's a really cool stage to be put on when it comes to the ESPN platform that we get to be able to have viewership the way that we do during March Madness. I think it's just a really awesome stage that we're on, and we get to showcase our athletes, our talent. It's really cool to watch. As far as the team score is concerned, I said, like, I thought it was going to be a little bit tighter. I thought it was going to be like in that 110, 116, like first to 100 type thing. I think you're just a couple of matches away from that, but we definitely had those tiers as we were discussing throughout the season. You got 3 legit teams that could be there right away. And it's like, if Iowa has a little bit more points and if Michigan has a few more guys do a little bit better, they're right there. That takes away from maybe a Penn State getting a guy to the semis or the finals.
Yeah, I think a couple things to point out. Number one is Penn State's record in the semis and finals is absolutely freaking insane. Number two, to touch on what you said, the ESPN coverage, the number of minutes that were watched on ESPN3 and then on the actual televised stuff it continues to grow, which is great for our sport, and everybody that watches that in their own way are really helping our sport. You're Switzerland because, you're Nike, and you just have to, you just hope all your guys do a good job. And even the schools that aren't Nike, like, you're not rooting against those guys. It is what it is. But it's hard to not feel bad for Iowa. Just that lost year, a lot of these guys were hurt. Like, if you put a healthy Jaden Ironman and a healthy Spencer Lee on Iowa, they're right there. Certainly a healthy Spencer Lee, they take second probably instead of third. With Jaden, they're either really close to first or first. I mean, obviously you got to earn it. Everybody's got injuries and issues, and so nobody really cares. And the last people anybody's going to cry for is Iowa, and the last people that want you to cry for them are the Brands brothers and Morningstar. So it's just an observation. I know Jaden. I've been around Spencer. Those guys are like good human beings, and I think like probably all the guys are. But when you get to meet them, it's a little different. Like like Logan Massa, his dad wrestled for my dad. And, I got to talk to him in the back, and he's like, the Mirikitani name comes up fairly often on our household. It's like hard to not root for those kind of guys. Right. So I would say this, that being on the ground and doing interviews gives you an entirely different view of the tournament. You miss matches because you're in the back talking to people, but you also just see the gut-wrenching losses and the unbelievable highs and lows of the sport. It also almost looks like a homeless camp down there where they got like crock pots and they got air mattresses. And that's the future. These schools are doing a better and better job. I'm older than you, but I remember like we were lucky if we had some sandwiches with us, and Gatorade bottles, and it continues to escalate. But for people that are bidding on the nationals, the back of the house is really important. The student athlete experience is what matters. They don't care that much about the fans because the fans are going to come. Like they're going to sell out any 19,000 seat arena, period. So well done by Detroit. That venue is amazing. The hard finding restaurants. And I'll give my guy at Tulsa, Joel Kester, a shout out. He was there. He was already getting ready. And he'll host the Big 12s, and NCAA is literally like 14 days apart. So for Grant and Mark, I'm David. Sorry for the break in the technology. We'll see y'all next week.